My name is Maria Salazar. I represent the city of Miami, a city that is full of banks and one of the most prosperous and prettiest cities in the country, but also with a very large immigration or immigrant population living in the city of Miami. You know that on May 19th, the White House issued an executive order that instructs Treasury and the banking regulators to try to identify those people who are undocumented in the country and who use our banking system by opening up, first of all, a company, then getting a tax ID number, and then going to a banking institution and opening up a bank account. I do not always agree with the White House immigration policies established by this administration. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But I believe that in this case, this new directive could be damaging to the average American citizen. And that's one of the questions that I want to pose to you. Republicans, we stand for less regulation, less paperwork, less hurdle to do business. So, Mr. Gould, thank you for being here and for answering our questions. In other words, do you believe, and tell me what's your personal opinion, that by having this directive coming from the White House, you may be then turning into a CBP agent, not only a banking regulator? What's your opinion on that?
Thank you for the question.
Sure.
And with respect, I think your concerns are overblown.
They are overblown?
Overblown, yes.
Okay, and tell me why.
I'd be happy to tell you why. As a supervisor of the U.S. banking system, I expect it not to be used to facilitate illegal activities, whether it be financial fraud or money laundering or anything of that nature. That is a long-standing obligation that we impose on banks. And I think it is an expectation that every American citizen has of its U.S. banking system, that it not be used for these things. As we've seen, fraud is so rampant in this country, particularly in certain states and localities, the president actually had to convene a task force to address financial fraud.
And I agree with you in that regard, that the banking institution cannot be used by others who are not American. But then reality could be, theory may not be practice. How can you make sure that the average American will not be affected by now establishing another layer of regulation?
Well, ma'am, a couple of things. Obviously, we at the OCC are certainly sensitive to regulatory burden in this area, as we are in all other areas. The OCC and Financial Crimes Enforcement Network and the federal banking agencies more generally expect banks to know their customers. That is an existing and long-standing statutory and regulatory obligation. Banks have flexibility in the documentation that they use to establish the identities of their customers. So we look forward to working with banks of all sizes to make sure that they continue to have flexibility to know their customers for these purposes.
But don't you think that that flexibility, that obviously the banking sector does not want any type of issues with the government? Let's put it. I mean, you guys want to follow, or the banks want to follow what the new laws are. So if I ask you, how much money will this be costing you? How many more individuals or regulators you would have to be hiring, or compliance agents, I should say, in order to satisfy the regulators' desires? I mean, it's more money, it's more paperwork. That's the bottom line. Am I right or wrong?
Well, again, I think it depends upon how banks are going to establish compliance with guidance that we have yet to even issue. So I think it's probably appropriate to withhold judgment until we've actually done the work, working with Secretary Besson and the other federal banking agencies to actually issue guidance pursuant to the EO.
So what you're telling me is that you're not concerned with this new directive coming from the White House, that this could create another burden, more paperwork, more money, more cost for the average banking credit union. That's what you're telling me. You're not concerned.
I think I think the president's EO is a common sense reaction to well understood and documented concerns that we are seeing in terms of a rise in financial fraud, money laundering, et cetera. And from my perspective, as a safety and soundness supervisor, I do want to make sure that the banks I supervise understand the nature of the financial risks that their customers may pose.
But then what is the difference between now and my time is now and before? We were always in the business of making sure that El Chapo does not have access to our banking system. But what is the difference between now and before May 19th? And with that, I close.
Well, ma'am, I would just say that this EO focuses us on a well-known and understood issue, and directs us to issue guidance directly addressing it, we customarily
Gentlewoman's
issue.
time has expired.
All right. Thank you for your time.